The message traveled across 10,000 star systems in less than a heartbeat. Every screen, every communication device, every holographic display in the known galaxy flickered and changed to show the same image. 12 figures stood in a great hall of black stone and golden light. They were the High Council of the galactic hegemony, and they had ruled the stars for longer than most species could remember. High Arbiter Velcroth stepped forward. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His eyes were black pools that had seen empires rise and fall. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. To the species known as humanity, he began. The galactic hegemony speaks with one voice. 10,000 years ago we offered you mercy. We gave you 17 systems to call your own. We asked only that you remain within your borders and trouble us no more. Today that arrangement ends. He paused to let his words sink in. Across billion worlds, your time of isolation is over. Your protection is withdrawn. The hegemony has decided that humanity poses a threat to galactic stability. Your rapid breeding, your aggressive nature, your refusal to accept your proper place among the stars, these things cannot be tolerated any longer. Velkoz's thin lips curved into something that might have been a smile. You have 30 standard days to surrender your worlds, your ships, and your weapons. Any resistance will be met with total annihilation. This is not a negotiation. This is a declaration of war. The transmission ended across the hegemony. Celebrations began. The troublesome humans would finally be dealt with. The mistake of letting them live 10,000 years ago would be corrected. On the diplomatic station orbiting the neutral world of Thesson Prime, Ambassador Y of the Melek watched the human delegation with great interest. The Melek were an old species known for their skill at reading other beings. Y had spent decades studying human expressions, human body language, human psychology. He considered himself an expert. What he saw now confused him deeply. The humans were laughing, not nervous laughter, not the desperate sound of creatures facing death. They laughed like old friends, sharing a joke they had waited years to tell. They clapped each other on the shoulders. Some of them wiped tears from their eyes. Admiral Chinilin sat at a small table near the observation window. She was a woman of 73 years, though human medicine made her look no older than 50. Her hair was silver and cut short in military fashion. Her eyes were the color of dark honey, and they sparkled with something Yor could not identify. She was playing chess with her grandson, a young officer named Thomas. When the declaration came, she had not even looked up from the board. She simply moved her knight and said, "Check." Thomas grinned and moved his king to safety. They actually did it. Grandmother, after all this time, I told you they would, Chen replied. Your great-great-grandmother told me the same thing when I was your age, and her grandmother told her. We always knew this day would come. Y approached their table carefully. In all his years of diplomatic service, he had never seen a species react to a declaration of war with joy. "Admiral Chen," he said, "forgive my intrusion, but I must ask, do you understand what has just happened? The hegemony commands 300 billion soldiers. They have warships beyond counting. They have destroyed species far more powerful than humanity." Chen finally looked up from her game. Her smile was warm, almost kind. "Ambassador Yor, I understand perfectly, better than you can imagine. She gestured to an empty chair. Please sit. Would you like some tea? Why sat though his mind screamed that this was madness. Admiral, with respect, this is not a time for tea. Your species has just been sentenced to death, has it? Chen picked up a small cup and breathed in the steam rising from it. Tell me, Ambassador, what do your intelligence reports say about humanity, about our population, our fleet strength, our military capabilities? Why hesitated? This information was supposed to be secret, but what did it matter now? The humans would all be dead in a few months anyway. Our estimates suggest a human population of approximately 2 billion, he said. Your fleet consists of 40 combat-capable vessels. Your technology is roughly equivalent to where it was 10,000 years ago, with some minor improvements. You have no allies, no hidden bases, no secret weapons. You are, forgive me for saying so, exactly what you appear to be, a small, isolated species that never grew beyond its cage. Chen listened to all of this with that same patient smile. When York finished, she took a sip of her tea and nodded slowly. Your intelligence services are very thorough, she said. They see exactly what we wanted them to see. Before why could ask what she meant, Chen pulled out a small communication device. She pressed a single button and spoke 6 words. They took the bait. Phase 1. She put the device away and returned her attention to the chess game. Your move. Thomas Y stood up so quickly that his chair fell backward. What have you done? What is Phase 1? Admiral, I demand an explanation. Chen did not look up. Ambassador, you have been a good friend to humanity over the years. Your reports to the hegemony have always been honest, even when honesty was not what they wanted to hear. I respect you for that. She moved another piece on the board. In 30 days, everything you think you know about humanity will change. I suggest you stay close to a viewing screen. You will want to see what happens next. Around them, the other human diplomats were packing their belongings. They moved with calm efficiency, as if this was something they had practiced many times. None of them seemed afraid. None of them seemed worried. They joked with each other and shared memories of their time on Thesson Prime. One young human woman stopped beside Ith and patted his shoulder gently. Don't feel bad, Ambassador, she said. Everyone underestimates humanity. It's kind of our thing. She walked away laughing. Across the galaxy, High Orbiter Velcroth received the first reports from human space. His advisors had expected panic. They had expected desperate pleas for mercy, evacuation attempts, military mobilization. The humans had 30 days, and surely they would spend those days in chaos and fear. The reports showed something else entirely. Not a single human vessel had fled. Not one refugee ship had launched. Not one emergency transmission had been sent. The 17 human systems were quiet, peaceful, almost serene. What are they doing? Velk demanded. His intelligence chief, a creature of metal and flesh, called the observer, studied the data. With growing confusion, they appear to be celebrating. High Arbiter, our listening posts have detected music, laughter, what seems to be parties. Across all 17 systems, the humans are throwing parties. Velketh felt something cold move through his ancient body. It was not quite fear. He had not felt fear in centuries, but it was something close. They know they cannot win, he said as much to convince himself as his advisors. They are simply enjoying their final days, a primitive coping mechanism. Perhaps the observer replied, but there is something else, something unusual. Report, we have intercepted a transmission from the human home world. It appears to be a planet-wide broadcast. The observer's mechanical voice held a note of uncertainty. The humans are singing high arbiter, all of them. Billions of voices raised in a single song. What song? The observer played the recording. The words were in the human tongue, but translators quickly converted them. 10,000 years we waited. In the dark, 10,000 years we sharpened every blade. 10,000 years we kept the sacred spark. Now comes the day our patience will be paid. They thought they locked us in a cage of stars. They thought they broke our spirits and our pride, but every chain just left us deeper scars, and every scar reminded us to bide. So let them come with all their ancient might. Let them bring their fleets across the void, for we have turned our prison into light, and what they tried to kill cannot be destroyed. The song continued verse after verse. But Velcro had heard enough. He turned away from the display, his hands clasped behind his back. It is nothing, he said. Songs cannot stop warships. Hope cannot defeat the hegemony. In 30 days they will learn the price of defiance. But later that night, alone in his chambers, Velkath found himself unable to sleep. He kept thinking about the human admiral and her chess game. He kept thinking about those 2 billion humans singing together across 17 worlds, and somewhere in the back of his ancient mind, a small voice whispered a question he could not answer. What if they know something we don't? 10,000 years is a very long time. Empires rise and fall, stars are born and die, species evolve, stagnate, and vanish into the dust of history. 10,000 years is enough time for almost anything to happen. The humans remembered everything. In the year that would later be called Year Zero, humanity was young. Among the stars, they had discovered faster than light travel. Barely a century before, they had colonized a handful of worlds. They had made first contact with alien species and learned, to their great excitement, that the universe was full of life. They had also learned that the universe was full of danger. The galactic hegemony came to humanity with a simple message: stop expanding, stop growing, accept your place as a minor species in a galaxy ruled by your betters. The alternative was extinction. Humanity's leaders gathered to discuss their options. They had a few dozen ships. The hegemony had millions. They had colonized 8 worlds. The hegemony ruled thousands. There was no military option. There was no diplomatic solution. There was only survival or death. A woman named Kenji Yamamoto stood before the United Earth Council and made the argument that would shape the next 100 centuries. They want us to accept a cage, she said. They want us to stop being human, to stop growing, stop dreaming, stop reaching for the stars. They think this will make us weak. They think time will erode our spirit until we become just another broken species waiting to die. She paused and looked at each council member in turn. They are wrong. Time is not our enemy. Time is our weapon. We will accept their cage. We will smile and bow and thank them for their mercy. And then we will use every single day they give us to prepare for the moment when that cage opens. The council voted. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would accept the truce, but humanity would not accept defeat. In the early years there was despair, the generation that signed the truce felt the shame of surrender. They had dreamed of a human future among the stars, and now that dream seemed dead. Many lost hope, many questioned whether survival was worth the price they had paid. Then came the philosopher Amara Okonkwo was a teacher from a small colony on the edge of human space. She was not a politician or a general. She was simply a woman who thought deeply about the human condition. When she spoke, people listened. We have been given a gift, she told her students. The hegemony meant it as a curse, but they do not understand us. They gave us time, 10,000 years of time. Do you know what humanity can do with 10,000 years? Her students shook their heads. Neither do I, Akono admitted, but I know this. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built 5,000 years ago, and it still stands. The first human walked upright 200,000 years ago, and we went from caves to starships. We are a species that builds, that grows, that refuses to stay still. She smiled, and her smile held fire. They think they have trapped us, but a wolf in a cage does not become a sheep. It becomes a more dangerous wolf, and when the cage door opens, it remembers everything. Okonkwo's words spread across human space like wildfire. Within a decade, her philosophy had become a movement. Within a century, it had become a religion. Within a millennium, it was simply the way things were. They called it the Long Project. Every human alive knew about the Long Project, though no human ever spoke of it where alien ears might hear. It was the great secret, the sacred trust, the promise that bound generation to generation across the centuries. We are preparing, we are waiting, and one day we will be free. The work began slowly. Human scientists developed technologies they never revealed to hegemony observers. They learned to fold space in ways the aliens could not detect. They discovered how to build in dimensions that existed outside normal reality. The first hidden shipyard was constructed in year 847. It was small, barely large enough to build a single destroyer, but it proved the concept was possible. By year 2000, there were 100 hidden shipyards. By year 5000, there were millions. Human population officially remained stable. Hegemony inspectors counted approximately 2 billion humans across the 17 systems, just as expected. What they could not see were the vast habitats hidden in folded space, cities that existed in dimensions there sensors could not detect. The billions upon billions of humans living, working, and dreaming in places the galaxy did not know existed. Mothers told their children the stories, teachers taught the history, artists created works that could not be shown to outsiders, but that burned with human pride and human hope. Every generation added to the project, building on what came before, preparing for what would come after. Not everyone would live to see liberation day, most would not. But that did not matter. What mattered was that Liberation Day would come, and when it did, humanity would be ready. In year 7th hour 432, a hegemony spy named Torvath managed to infiltrate human space. He was good at his job. He had penetrated a dozen other species and uncovered their deepest secrets. He expected humans to be no different. What he found confused him. The humans did not seem like a conquered people. They did not act like prisoners. They laughed easily and worked with purpose. There, children played games with strange names, like Fleet Commander and Liberation Day. And the long wait, Torveth attended a gathering where humans sang songs. Together, one song made him deeply uneasy. Our great-grandchildren will see the stars. They sang, our great-grandchildren will break the chains we build today for tomorrow's children. We plant the seeds for future rains. He filed his report. With hegemony intelligence, he warned them that something was happening in human space, something they did not understand, something that might be dangerous. His superiors dismissed his concerns. Humans were primitive. Humans were weak. Humans had been contained for 7,000 years without incident. The spy was seeing shadows where none existed. Torveth lived out his remaining years on a quiet hegemony world. He never forgot what he had seen. He never stopped wondering what the humans were really doing behind their quiet smiles. He died in year 7091, never knowing how right he had been. By year 9000, the long project was nearly complete. Human technology had advanced beyond anything the hegemony could imagine. Human industry could produce warships by the millions. Human military doctrine had been refined over 9 millennia of planning and simulation. But the humans did not strike first. They waited. We must not become what they feared, said Admiral Yuki Tanaka, commander of the Hidden Fleet. We must not prove them right about us. When the time comes, it must be their choice, their aggression, their mistake. Waiting continued. In year 9547, hegemony observers noticed something strange. Human birth rates had declined slightly. Human economic output had decreased. Human ships were aging and not being replaced. The observers interpreted this as the beginning of the end. Humanity was finally dying, just as the hegemony had always predicted. 10,000 years of isolation had broken them. At last, they were wrong. Decline was a performance. The aging ships were props. The reduced birth rates were lies fed to sensors designed to see exactly what humanity wanted them to see. Deep in folded space, 900 billion humans waited in cities of light and steel. Millions of warships hung ready in shipyards that spanned dimensions. Weapons existed that could crack planets and extinguish stars, and still the humans waited. Patience, Admiral Chen Lin told her granddaughter in year 987. We have waited this long. We can wait a little longer. When they come for us, we will be ready, but we will not fire the first shot. That is not who we are. Her granddaughter, who would one day become the admiral who received the declaration of war, nodded solemnly. I understand. Grandmother, we are not conquerors. We are survivors, and survivors know how to wait. In year 10,000, the galactic hegemony decided that the time had come to end the human problem once and for all. They debated for months. They analyzed intelligence reports. They calculated risks and rewards. In the end, they concluded that humanity was weak, declining, and ripe for conquest. They sent their declaration of war, expecting terror and despair. They received laughter. 10,000 years of preparation, 10,000 years of patience, 10,000 years of building and dreaming, and refusing to surrender. The long project was complete. Now it was time for humanity to show the galaxy what they had become. The hegemony invasion fleet was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, 300. Capital ships formed the core of the Armada. Each one was a mountain of metal and fire, 5 km long and bristling with weapons that could reduce a planet to glass. Behind them came the support vessels, the troop transports, the supply ships, the repair docks. Thousands of smaller craft filled the spaces between the giants. High Arbiter Velkov stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Judgment and watched the fleet move into formation. This was his moment of triumph. For centuries he had argued that humanity was a threat that needed to be eliminated. Now at last the hegemony had listened. All ships report ready. High Arbiter said. Fleet Commander Sarthan, a warrior of the crushed species whose ancestors had fought in 100 wars. Good, begin they. Advance, we will crush them system by system until nothing remains. The fleet entered human space, expecting chaos, evacuating civilians, desperate military preparations, perhaps a few suicide attacks from humans who preferred death to surrender. They found peace. The human border systems were quiet. Civilian ships moved in normal patterns. Communication channels carried ordinary traffic about trade and weather and entertainment. It was as if the humans had not received the declaration of war at all. They are in shock. Velk decided. The reality has not yet reached their primitive minds. Press forward. The fleet advanced deeper into human territory. Still no response. Still no resistance. The 40 human warships that intelligence had identified remained at their stations, making no move to intercept or flee. Finally, in the fourth human system, they found someone waiting for them. A single human vessel hung in space near the system's gas giant. It was small, barely a frigate, painted white with blue markings, a flag of truce in the old tradition. They wish to negotiate, Sarthan said with contempt. Shall I destroy them? Veloth considered. A part of him wanted to obliterate the tiny ship and move on. But another part was curious. What could the humans possibly have to say? Open a channel. The face that appeared on the screen was that of Admiral Chen Weyan. She looked calm, even relaxed, sitting in what appeared to be a comfortable chair with a cup of tea in her hand. High Arbiter Velkov, she said pleasantly, thank you for taking my call. Human, you waste my time. Surrender now or be destroyed with the rest of your species. I'm afraid surrender isn't on the agenda today. Chen took a sip of her tea. I'm here to give you a choice, Arbiter. One chance to turn your fleet around and go home. One opportunity to avoid what comes next. Velcro laughed. It was a harsh sound, like stones grinding together. You threaten me with what? Your 40 ships against my 300. Your 2 billion people against my 300 billion soldiers. Human, your arrogance is almost impressive. Chen smiled. You know, that's exactly what I expected you to say. I had to try, though. It's important that we gave you the choice. She set down her tea and leaned forward. Now pay attention, Arbiter. You're about to see something no one in the galaxy has seen. For 10,000 years, she pressed a button on her chair. Phase 2 authorization. Chen 7773, execute. For a moment, nothing happened. Velcro opened his mouth to mock the human's theatrical display. Then space began to tear itself apart. Across the human system, reality rippled like water struck by stones. Points of light appeared, small at first, then growing into vast openings in the fabric of existence. Through These openings came structures that defied belief. Cities emerged from nothing, massive habitats the size of moons unfolded into normal space. Industrial complexes that could have housed the entire population of a hegemony world materialized as if they had always been there, and the ships came like a flood. They poured through the dimensional gates in numbers that broke Velkov's tactical display. Thousands became tens of thousands, tens of thousands became hundreds of thousands. The count passed 1 million and kept climbing. What is this? Velcro whispered. This is what we built while you weren't looking, Chen replied. Her voice was calm, but something fierce burned in her eyes. 10,000 years, Arbiter. Did you really think we spent them doing nothing? The human fleet spread out around the hegemony armada like a net closing on Vish. Ships of every size, from nimble fighters to massive dreadnoughts that made the eternal judgment look like a toy. They filled the space between the stars until there was nothing visible but human vessels in every direction. Sorathan's voice shook. High Arbiter, we are completely surrounded. I am reading over 3 million hostile contacts. Our weapons cannot target this many enemies. Our shields cannot withstand concentrated fire from this many ships. Velk could not speak. His mind refused to accept what his eyes were showing him, and that's just this system. Chen continued. The same thing is happening across all 17 of our worlds, plus a few hundred others we colonized in dimensions you couldn't see. This is impossible. Velcro finally managed. Your population was 2 billion. We counted them. You counted what we wanted you to count. The real number is closer to 900 billion. We've had a lot of time to grow. 900 billion, nearly 3 times the population of the entire hegemony. And they had hidden it all for 10 millennia, waiting for exactly this moment. Your technology, Velcro said, grasping for something that made sense. We monitored your development. You showed no signs of advancement. We showed you what we wanted you to see. Would you like to know what we really developed? Chen gestured to her display. We have weapons that can collapse stars, shields that can withstand supernova, drives that can cross the galaxy in hours. We have technologies you cannot even imagine because you never bothered to imagine them. She stood up and walked closer to the camera. For 10,000 years, we planned for this day. Every scientist, every engineer, every soldier who ever lived among us contributed to this moment. We built in secret. We trained in secret. We waited in secret. Her voice dropped low. And now, Arbiter, the secret is out. On the eternal judgment, alarms blared as human weapons locked onto the flagship. Velk watched his tactical officers scramble uselessly. At their stations, there was nothing they could do. The hegemony fleet was surrounded, outgunned, and completely at the mercy of an enemy they had underestimated for 100 centuries. One transmission, Arbiter, Chen said. That's all it would take. One word from me and your entire fleet becomes debris. 300 capital ships gone in seconds, and then we move on to the rest of the hegemony. Velk felt something he had not experienced in a very long time. Fear. Snorts. True, deep existential fear. Why? He asked. Why did you wait? You could have struck at any time. You could have destroyed us centuries ago. Because we wanted to give you a chance, Chen replied. We wanted to see if you had change, if 10,000 years had taught you Anything about peace, about cooperation, about treating other species with respect. She shook her head sadly. But you haven't changed at all. You're still the same conquerors you always were. Still thinking that might makes right. Still believing that the strong should crush the weak, then destroy us. Velkov said, and there was something almost like acceptance in his voice. We would have destroyed you. We deserve nothing less. Chen smiled, but there was no cruelty in it, only a deep ancient patience that Velkroth was only beginning to understand. That's where you're wrong, Arbiter. Destroying you was never the plan. She sat back down in her chair and picked up her tea again. The plan was always something else entirely, but you're not ready to hear it yet. What do you want from us right now? I want you to take a good look around. I want you to see what humanity has become, and I want you to take a message back to your High Council. What message? Chen's smile widened. Tell them we're ready to talk, and tell them that this time we'll be setting the terms. The Hegemony High Council met in emergency session for the first time in 3,000 years. 12 species, 12 leaders, 12 ancient powers who had ruled the galaxy since before humanity learned to make fire. They sat in their great hall of black stone and golden light, but the atmosphere was very different from their last gathering. Then they had voted for war with confidence and pride. Now they sat in stunned silence. The reports from the invasion fleet had arrived hours ago. The images were being broadcast across the hegemony. Every citizen of every member species had seen the wall of human ships surrounding their mighty armada. Every military analyst had run the numbers and reached the same conclusion. The hegemony could not win this war. They could not even survive it. We must surrender immediately, said the representative of the Mel, his voice trembling. Before they decide to attack, surrender to what terms? Demanded the Crush Warrior King. They have not made demands. They have not threatened us. They simply wait. That is what frightens me most, whispered the eldest member of the council, an ancient being of crystal and light called the Eternal. They have absolute power, and they do nothing with it. What are they waiting for? High Arbiter Velko stood before them, diminished somehow, as if the shock of what he had seen had shrunk him. The human admiral offered to meet, he said. She suggested a neutral station. No conditions, no threats, just conversation. A trap, the Crush declared. Perhaps, but what choice do we have? The council debated for hours. In the end, they agreed to send Velcro and 3 other representatives to meet with the humans. If it was a trap, better to lose 4 leaders than the entire hegemony. The meeting took place on a station in neutral space, far from any military presence. Velcro arrived, expecting armed guards, security measures, shows of dominance. He found a quiet room with comfortable chairs and a table set with refreshments from a dozen worlds. Admiral Chen Lin rose to greet him. She wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. Her handshake was firm but not aggressive. Thank you for coming, Arbiter. Please sit. Would you like something to drink? Velko sat, but he did not relax. I did not come for hospitality, Admiral. I came to learn what humanity wants. Fair enough. Chen took her own seat across from him. Let me start by telling you what we don't want. She leaned forward. We don't want revenge. We don't want to destroy the hegemony. Snorts. We don't want to enslave your species or burn your worlds or do any of the things you would have done to us. Velk blinked. Then what do you want? We want peace, real peace, not the false peace of cages and threats. We want trade, cultural exchange, cooperation between species. We want a galaxy where no one is afraid of anyone else. The other hegemony representatives exchanged confused glances. This was not how Victor spoke. This was not how conquest worked. You have the power to destroy us, Velka said slowly. Every tactical analysis agrees. Your fleet alone could reduce the hegemony to ashes. And you want peace? Yes. Why? Chen was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. 10,000 years ago, you put us in a cage because you were afraid. You looked at humanity and saw something dangerous, something that might one day threaten your power. So you tried to contain us, hoping we would wither and die. She met Velka's eyes. Do you know what the hardest part of the long project was? It wasn't the technology. It wasn't hiding our population or building the hidden fleet. The hardest part was remembering why we were doing it. I don't understand. We could have become exactly what you feared. We could have used those 10,000 years to build nothing but weapons, to cultivate nothing but hatred, to plan nothing but destruction. Chen shook her head. Many of our people wanted exactly that. Every generation had those who argued for preparing the greatest revenge in history, but you didn't know, because that would have proven you right. It would have meant the hegemony was correct to fear us, correct to cave us, correct to try to destroy us. Chen's voice grew soft. We didn't want to be right in our vengeance. We wanted to be better than that. She pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. Hologram appeared showing a simple document. Here are our terms. Read them. Velk studied the document with growing disbelief. The terms were simple. Hegemony would acknowledge human sovereignty over any systems humanity chose to settle. Trade routes would open between human and hegemony space. Diplomatic relations would be established. Cultural exchange programs would begin, and that was all. No reparations, no territorial demands, no punishment for 10,000 years of imprisonment, no requirement that the hegemony disarm or surrender power. Just peace. There must be more said. There must be something you're not telling us. There is one more thing, Chen admitted, but it's not a demand. It's an offer. She changed the hologram to show a map of the galaxy. Several regions were highlighted in red. Marrow, the Kree remnants, all the species the hegemony conquered or destroyed over the millennia. We know where their surviving populations are. We know that the Marrow have lived as slaves for 6,000 years. We know that the Vanni were driven from their home world and forced to survive on barren moons. Chen's voice hardened slightly. We are going to help them. We are going to offer them freedom, resources, protection if they want their home worlds back. We will help them reclaim them. If they want independence, we will support them. You would weaken the hegemony. We would right old wrongs. What you do with the hegemony after that is your business, but we will not stand by while species suffer under your rule. Velkov sat back in his chair, his mind spinning. He had expected ultimatums, demands for surrender, plans for occupation. He had prepared himself for humiliation and loss. Instead, he was being offered something he could not comprehend. Why? He asked again. Admiral, please help me understand. You have every right to destroy us. We tried to exterminate your species. We kept you in chains for 100 centuries. Why would you show us mercy? Chen was quiet for a long moment, a very long time ago. She said finally, there was a philosopher named Amara Okonkwo. She taught us that being caged doesn't mean you have to become a monster, that suffering doesn't justify causing suffering, that the measure of a species isn't what they do when they're weak, but what they do when they're strong. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. We are strong now, stronger than you can imagine, strong enough to do anything we want to. The hegemony and face no consequences. She turned back to face, and what we want is to break the cycle, to prove that power doesn't have to mean cruelty, that the galaxy can be better than it has been. You believe that's possible. I believe we have to try. I believe that's what all those generations work for, not revenge, not dominance, but the chance to build something new. Velko thought about his long life. He thought about all the wars he had advocated for, all the species he had helped destroy, all the times he had chosen power over mercy. He thought about the songs the humans had sung when they learned the truce was over, and for the first time in centuries he felt something other than cold calculation. Admiral Chen, he said slowly, I believe I understand now. Perhaps not completely, but I am beginning to. Chen smiled, and it was a genuine smile, warm and hopeful. That's all I ask, Arbiter. Understanding is how peace begins. She extended her hand. So, do we have a deal? Velk looked at her hand. In his culture, physical contact with an enemy was considered the deepest form of trust. To touch someone who could destroy you and choose not to fear them. He reached out and took her hand. We have a deal, he said, and I think I have a great deal to learn from humanity. 5 years passed like a single breath. After 10,000 years of waiting, the galaxy was changing, and everyone could feel it. Old certainties were crumbling. New possibilities were blooming. Things that had seemed impossible for millennia were suddenly wonderfully real. The human emergence, as historians came to call it, transformed everything. Human technology flowed across the galaxy like water finding its level. Diseases that had plagued alien species for centuries were cured within months. Engineering problems that had stumped the best hegemony minds for generations were solved by human scientists who seemed to see solutions where others saw only obstacles. But it was not conquest. The humans did not demand payment for their gifts. They did not attach conditions or strings. They simply shared openly and freely, as if the advancement of all species was the only goal that mattered. The Morrow were free. For 6,000 years, they had served as slaves to the hegemony. Their culture had been suppressed. Their history had been erased. Their children had been born into bondage and died without ever knowing freedom. Now they had their own world. Human engineers had helped them terraform a planet in a system the hegemony had never bothered to develop. Human teachers had helped them recover their lost language and traditions. Human diplomats had ensured that the hegemony would never threaten them again. On the day the first moral government was elected, a human delegation attended the ceremony. They brought no flags, no symbols of power. They simply stood in the crowd and cheered with everyone else. An elderly Marrow woman approached the human ambassador after the celebration. I need to ask you something, she said. My grandmother told me stories when I was young, stories about a species that would one day come to free us, she said. They were trapped in a cage of their own, but they never stopped believing in freedom. The ambassador nodded. We heard the same stories about you, she replied. About the Marrow who never forgot who they were, who passed down their history in secret, who kept hoping. Even when hope seemed foolish, the old woman's eyes filled with tears. We thought we were alone all those years. We thought no one cared. You were never alone, the ambassador said gently. We just couldn't reach you yet. They returned to their home world for the first time in 4,000 years. When the hegemony drove them out, they had destroyed every city, poisoned every water source, salted every field. The Vanny had survived on barren moons and asteroid colonies, slowly dying out, slowly losing hope. Human restoration ships spent 2 years healing the planet. They cleaned the water, they restored the soil, they planted forests from genetic samples the Vanny had preserved. Across the millennia, when the first Villani family stepped off the transport and touched their ancestral soil, they fell to their knees and wept. All around them, humans, and worked together, building homes, planting gardens, creating a future where none had seemed possible. A human construction worker named Marcus sat beside a young during a break, sharing food and watching the sunset over the restored plains. It's beautiful, the Vanny said. It really is. Can I ask you something? Why did your people help us? You didn't know us. You had no reason to care. Marcus thought about the question. I guess because we knew what it was like being trapped, being told you didn't matter, having the galaxy look at you and see something small and worthless. He shrugged. We knew what it felt like, and we didn't want anyone else to feel that way. But you could have done anything. With your power, you could have taken everything. No one could have stopped you. That's true, but that's not who we decided to be. Faye was quiet for a long time. I think I understand, they said. Finally, your cage didn't make you smaller. It made you see how important freedom really is. Marcus smiled. Something like that. Yeah, Velketh, once High Arbiter of the Hegemony, now served as an ambassador to human space. It was a strange turn for someone who had spent centuries advocating for human destruction, but Velcro had changed. He walked through a human city on Earth, place called New Geneva, that had been built to welcome alien visitors. Humans and aliens of a dozen species moved through the streets together, talking, laughing, sharing meals. Children of different worlds played together in parks while their parents watched with easy smiles. In the central plaza stood a monument. It was a simple thing, just a wall of dark stone covered in names. Billions of names carved in letters almost too small to read. Velcro had asked what it was when he first arrived. His human guide had explained, those are the names of everyone who worked on the long project, every scientist, every engineer, every teacher, every parent who raised children to continue the work, every person who contributed to making this day possible. There are so many, over 10,000 years. Yes, there were a lot of us. Now Velketh stood before the monument alone, reading the names at random. Kenji Yamamoto, who had argued for accepting the cage, Amara Okonkwo, who had given them the philosophy to survive it, millions of others whose names meant nothing to him, but who had each played their part. At the bottom of the monument, beneath all the names, was An inscription they could not see the day of liberation, but they built it for us anyway. Velcro felt something shift. Inside him, something that had been frozen for a very long time began to thaw. He had lived for thousands of years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had made decisions that shaped the fate of billions, but he had never seen anything like this. A species that planned for a future they would never see, a people who sacrificed for descendants they would never meet. Civilization that chose hope over despair, mercy over revenge, building over destruction. You're crying, ambassador. Velcro turned to find a human child standing nearby, a little girl with dark hair and curious eyes. I am, he admitted. I didn't know I still could. Why are you sad? I'm not sad. Little one, he searched for the word. I'm humbled. Do you know what that means? The girl nodded seriously. It means someone showed you something so beautiful that it made you feel small. Yes, that's exactly right. The girl smiled and took his hand. My grandmother says that's how change starts. Someone shows you something beautiful and you want to be beautiful too. Your grandmother sounds very wise. She is. She helped build the monument. Velk looked down at the child who held his hand so trustingly, a child who had never known cages or fear or the weight of 10,000 years, a child who took for granted that the galaxy could be a place of peace and cooperation. What's your name? He asked. Amara, like the philosopher. Of course it was Amara, Velkov said slowly. I think I finally understand what your people were building all those years. What not? Weapons, not revenge, not power. He squeezed her small hand gently. You were building people like you, people who see a crying alien and offer comfort instead of fear, people who want the galaxy to be beautiful. Amara smiled up at him. Is it working? Velkath looked around the plaza. Humans and aliens walked together. Beneath an open sky, children played games that had no winners or losers, only fun. Somewhere music was playing, and people were dancing regardless of species. Far above, stars shone down on a galaxy that was learning slowly, painfully, wonderfully how to be free. Yes, Velk said, I think it is. And somewhere across the vast reaches of space and time, the spirits of those who had kept the faith for 10,000 years smiled down at what their patience had created, a galaxy reborn, a future worth waiting for, a humanity that had proved at last that the measure of strength is not what you can destroy, but what you choose to build.